now you know what it means to be on Thai time. It's 10:09 here, so I apologize. That's a full 9 minutes late, and let me get rid of that, and let's go over there. And so that's the beach of Boracay, because we are no longer looking at the beach over here in Pattaya. So let's get back to what we were talking about, and let me just verify that I'm streaming and stuff. Restream seems to tell me that I'm doing okay, and that I'm online everywhere, and I tend to believe Restream, so I think we're good. And so if one of you, at least one of you, could at least throw something into the chat and give me some acknowledgement. I did see someone the live chat does work. However, that stream is old. I switched to a new stream, so I completely apologize if you're not on that one. My battery was dying. I needed to move, and so I basically needed to restart my encoder. And that is completely my fault for not thinking ahead that every outlet outdoors would be live. So, whoops. But anyway, it looks like I've got some decent Wi-Fi in here too, from my phone, because I'm streaming through my hotspot on my phone. And all right, cool. So it looks like we got some folks on Facebook. Hello. And it also looks like back on YouTube we're doing good. So do me a favor and hit the chat, and then we'll go from there. But thank you very much, Patty. I'm freezing up here on Facebook. That bums me out. Okay, I will work on that. Right now it tells me that I'm streaming at 4.4 megabits a second. So it dumps down to 2.6 occasionally. But please do tell me if that is still causing a problem, because I definitely don't want that. But so far it looks like it's okay. Now, to be fair, I'm also on a cheesy laptop. But it looks like I've got pretty good signal on my phone, and with any luck, this thing will work out okay. So, all right. So anyway, greetings. What's going on? It's Mike's from LiveMyAssOff.com. If you don't know, I appreciate everyone who's listening. I especially appreciate Marty Johnson, because he was the one who encouraged me, as well as scolded me for not scheduling this, right? And what I discovered is it's actually pretty easy to do so. Thank you, Patty. I really appreciate that. If it does get worse, just throw some darts at the back of my head, and I'll pay you $1 for each one that hits me. So I'm indoors in the lounge here. Thank you, Jorgen. I remember you from a previous chat. Thank you so much for joining again. And please, if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, let me know. I was talking about the process of basically getting the APEC card, and I touched on the whole Trusted Traveler program that we have for the United States, and global entry, and then APEC. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about the background check, because it's not something to be taken lightly. Because again, basically what the United States is saying is, okay, we pretty much trust you implicitly. So obviously they're going to scan luggage. They don't know that your luggage is your luggage when they scan it. They just scan every single piece of luggage, right? But to the whole point that Ryan brought up last time, which is the whole, hey, my aunt got busted with some, sausage that she didn't claim, and I'm having a mocha, so apologize for the audio pause here. Hopefully you also didn't get an audio slurp. Anyway, so so that I just wanted to just let you guys know that that's it's not nothing. Okay. The other thing I did want to mention is there was a guy on Facebook who reached out to me, and he either started a channel or a group or something like this, or was making videos specifically to getting APEC cards for people in, it was either Indonesia or Malaysia. I'm going to go with Malaysia simply because Kuala Lumpur is pretty high on my list of other sort of relevant startup-related cities here in ASEAN. If you don't know what ASEAN is, ASEAN, it's the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And because of those groups of nations, it is one of the top 10 reasons that I came here. Obviously, many of the top 10 reasons I came here are in my other videos of, why Thailand, right? But the growth over here is significantly faster. It's not completely hockey sticking, but it's growing at a much more rapid pace. But stand by. Anyway, so he reached out to me and he says, "Hey, can I use your video where you talked about your experience going through immigration in Thailand, and specifically at Suvarnabhumi Airport in Bangkok, so that I can give an example of, because basically what he's going to do is he's going to provide a service for people in his country and help them get their APEC card. Now, in other countries, it's not just like go to a website and after you've gone through the whole global entry process, you just like click a box, pay $100, and then you go for an interview. You do go for an interview, by the way, to get your APEC card. The guy asked me, he said, okay, so why do you need an APEC card? And, not really flippantly, but potentially a little bit, I just said to him, have you ever waited in line in the Bangkok airport? And it was pretty rhetorical because I was pretty convinced that this guy from Tucson, Arizona immigration department had not been to Bangkok before. So I figured he'd just be like, oh, yeah, absolutely, I'm sure. And sure enough, he was like, oh, yeah. Stamp. But I mean, at the end of the day, what's he going to do? I was there. I was I was dressed like an adult, and Gracie and I had gone there just specifically for the appointment. By the way, there absolutely are a number of trusted traveler global entry offices open on the weekends. The specific office that I'm talking about, where I went to the interview for my APEC card, and just so you know, just once I went for the interview, it was literally about less than 2 weeks, and I got my new one. Or not my new one, I got my first one. My new one arrived less than 2 weeks after I renewed it. But at the interview, we went on a Saturday, and we were literally the only people there, and then another couple showed up. But it was totally, put it this way, it was worth it for me to get up in the morning in San Diego and get in the car and drive to Tucson to get this card, and then drive back like literally after a 15-minute meeting. And I think the round trip drive was 17 hours. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't 17 hours. What's it take to drive to Tucson? Probably six and a half. So probably, we spent the whole day in the car, and I think we left at like 3 in the morning, and I had like a 10:30 appointment or something like that. So yeah, so we probably spent 13, 14 hours driving. But considering the amount of time and frustration that the APEC card yields you, that it removes from your life, it's totally worth it. So anyway, kudos to the Tucson Global Entry Office. Thank you very much. So in other countries, specifically this Indonesia, let's go with that, or Malaysia, I'm sorry, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And also, I also know what you need to do if you're going to get an APEC card if you're a Filipino. You have to go through an enormous amount of paperwork, because the APEC card and the APEC privileges in the other countries here are significantly different. They're significantly more than what is afforded us with U.S. passports. The U.S. is kind of on a cursory sort of relationship with the APEC cooperation, right? Because I mean, like, we have a border, right? Like, California's in the Pacific, so we're part of the whole, but we're not really the Asia Pacific part of it. Although, I mean, for sure we have an economy in Hawaii that absolutely, Midway, and that's, anyway, the point is that, we're there, but we're not really Asia Pacific. If I were to walk up to someone in the street and say Asia Pacific, they wouldn't say, oh yeah, right, Long Beach. No, okay, right. So anyway, the point is that we're part of it, but we don't get all of the benefits and privileges that the folks that are over here do, right? And so because of that, what they need to do to join APEC is to present a significant amount of documentation that relates to what their business is, and what they're doing to actually add value to the Asia-Pacific economic cooperation, right? So in the Philippines, for example, for Gracie to be part of this scheme, she would need to bring, well, first of all, she needs to join like their Better Business Bureau and actually attend meetings. So there's documentation, there's information you need to provide, there's process, there's procedure, but there's also like, political nonsense. You need to show up, and you need to have relationships, and you need to have, that sort of thing. So it's not just sort of the security and background check thing that we get from being part of it in the U.S., right? But nonetheless, the benefit is good for us in the U.S. And if you're doing any travel in this part of the world, Thailand, Vietnam, that sort of thing, highly recommend the APEC card. Again, I think it's only like another $100 or regardless. I can tell you that global entry is $100. And again, back to my experience of landing in Los Angeles one time, and it was, let's face it, whenever I landed in Los Angeles, the majority of the time it's been after a 12-hour flight at least, sometimes 13, sometimes 14, sometimes 15. And about the last thing I want to do is stand in line with anybody, with the exception of Gracie. But other than that, it's I would have paid $100 that day to get through there, and I have this card that lasts 5 years. So anyway, I highly recommend it to anybody. But so anyway, I was responding to this guy. And about the APEC card, and one of the things that he questioned me about was, hey, so I'm there and I'm in Thailand and I'm, effectively doing business, right? You're doing business. You're not working because, again, you don't have a work permit. Well, you may have, but the premise is that you are coming in with this APEC business travel card because you're doing business travel. And so, you basically get a stamp, a 90-day, visa exempt stamp, because they kind of assume that you're not really, going to be doing tourist activities. I mean, I'm sure they're like, yeah, he's going to go to dinner, of course, right? And he's probably going to go to Wat Po and the Grand Palace, whatever. But the point is that it's for, like business meetings and that sort of things. Now, to be fair, there's also a visa that you can get specifically for let's just talk about for Thailand, because I've used the card to get into Vietnam, I've used it to get into Singapore, which was hugely beneficial in Singapore. Singapore, amidst all of its perfection, its immigration line and entry right before baggage claim is pretty dysfunctional. There's no like rows, there's no lines, there's sort of the people just sort of kind of all get together. And if you know anything about what happens when you get together a whole bunch of Chinese people, the order is different than what certainly I prefer and what I'm accustomed to. Whereas if you get on an escalator in Singapore, everybody on the right is standing, and there is a space. There's an absolute space on the left for people to walk. They are very orderly in that sense. Additionally, nobody is smoking on the sidewalk, and that's kind of nice. they also have, it's not common, but they have a few places where they have 2 sidewalks, and one of them is smoking and one of them is non-smoking, which is kind of silly, really, right? It's like, what do they have, air like blowing the other, but the point is that I'm sure that's some historical thing from whatever. They also don't have they don't have one sidewalk where you can chew gum and spit it on the ground, and then another one where you won't get caned, right? Which, to be fair, it hasn't happened since the 70s, just so you know. So when people refer to that, they're like, oh my God, when you land, aren't you going to get caned if you chew? No. And to be fair, they don't talk about it too much. What they do impose upon you is a very clear expectation that if you land in Singapore and have any business with illegal drugs, you will die. You will be killed. I'm not joking. On the back of the immigration form, when you land, it says those convicted of illegal drugs will be executed. It says it in a red English on the back. You can get a 90-day visa before coming to Thailand if you visit the Thai embassy in your country. That is absolutely correct. You can get a 90-day visa. You can get a 90-day visa. You can get a multiple entry tourist visa, an METV. And you can also get a visa that allows you to come into the kingdom for 60 days. You can get a media visa. And you can get a long stay visa depending upon, and again, there are qualifications for all of these. But again, a lot of these things, and he brings up a good point, because you can get a 90-day visa from Thailand from the embassy in your own country, and in the United States you can do that by mail, and it doesn't have a background check. And I believe it is valid for 1 year. I'm not totally sure on that. They're probably, if it's multiple entry, I believe that it is valid for 1 year from the time it is issued, and then upon entry, you're stamped in. You can stay then for 90 days, and then you must exit. But from the day it is issued, I believe it is valid for 1 year. The kind that he's speaking about. And again, you can get a multiple entry tourist visa. Additionally, with these visas that allow for some, finite amount of entry, towards the end of that, right? So they stamp it and they say, hey, look, you're here on February 1st. You got to get out of here by May 1st, right? Approximately, certainly if you did it a month ahead of time for a 90-day stamp, but about 2 weeks before you're supposed to leave, if you go to the immigration office and apply for an extension of 30 days for 1,900 baht, unless you've done something completely stupid and you're in their system there's a record of you being an idiot, then they're going to grant it. So that usually what people will, if they're trying to sort of, extend their vacation. Now, again, the idea behind that is that you're going to come over here and you're going to, have your own means, right? You're going to be able to support yourself, and they're not going to make it mandatory that you prove you have health insurance, for example, but they're, you're going to come over here and you're going to be a tourist for 90 days. And then you can stay for another 30 if you'd like. And again, a lot of people get these visas too with the idea that, okay, I'm going to get this visa because I have something that I'm going to do when I get to either that part of the world, or I'm going to get to Thailand. And I'm going to get here, and then before day 60, then I have this plan to get an O visa, and then I'm going to go to the immigration, I'm going to change it, or I've met my wife or my husband, and I'm going to, go change it into a marriage visa, and I'm going to move money over, and all of the necessary things that you have to go through to get the various types of visas. But that's absolutely an option. And I will tell you that the whole process of taking it's a pretty minimum amount of paperwork actually, and sending that along with your passport off to the embassy. You can actually go to a consulate as well, but you can mail all of that to the embassy. So in the United States, for example, you could mail it to the consulate in Los Angeles. You could also mail all that documentation, including your passport, with a check, right, to the embassy in Washington, D.C. And say, hey, I'd like I filled out the form, here are my pictures, and here is, the other items that you've asked for on the website relative to your either consulate or embassy. And they will usually issue it, and then put the sticker right inside of your passport and ship it back to you. Something you may not know, and so let's talk about that. So one of the additional things, and many people know about global entry, so I might be already telling you guys something you may know, but you might not know is that there is a item called a second valid passport for, again, U.S. citizens. The second valid passport is simply that. It is a second passport that allows you to travel. It is not a duplicate passport, let's be very clear. And anyone that you speak to in immigration or any service that provides these second valid passports, they are very clear that you are not getting two passports. Don't think you're like some James Bond dude and you're getting like two passports or whatever. It is a second valid passport. The reason you have this is because that process that I discussed, where you take an envelope and you put your information in there and you put your passport in there. Well, I mean, I've had this scenario where it's like, well, I need to get my Vietnamese 1-year multiple entry visa, and so I put all that stuff in it and I threw it in an envelope and I sent it off, I believe, to Washington D.C. And then 2 weeks later, or within 2 weeks actually, I'm like, well, wait a minute, I'm going to Cabo. And I needed a passport, right? And so what I had was a second valid passport. And so you have documentation, and I would recommend going through a passport service. One of those services that you pay like anywhere from $99 to, if you need your passport turned around, if you need a passport renewed in like 24 hours, you pay them like $300 and they get it done expedited. But you get a second valid passport, and what you do is there's an application form for it. You actually write a letter saying these are the reasons why I need a second valid passport, because basically I'm going to be surrendering my passport to an embassy somewhere, and that's usually the main reason. And at the same time that it's not going to be in my possession because it's going to be in an embassy's possession. Fat iPad Fingers was watching the recording stream. Looks good from here. Thank you, Adam. I really appreciate that. Whenever I hear Fat Fingers, I always think of that one scene in The Simpsons where it said, "I'm sorry, the fingers you're using to dial are too fat. Please use a special dialing wand." But anyway, so there's this second valid passport, and you give them, and you also give them, say, okay, so here's the time when I'm going to need this passport actually. So for example, I needed to send them my itinerary when I was going to Cabo, and saying, and so just so you know, that's the same week that my passport is going to be mailed to the Vietnamese embassy to get, and they've never questioned me or whatever. And I can't remember how much it was. It was like, $100, $150, something like this. Some sort of amount very similar to the renewal of a passport, a regular renewal of a passport. The first time you get one, it is valid for 2 years. So, what does that mean? That means that basically it's valid for 18 months. Because you know that if you enter a country and you give them a passport and it has less than 6 months of validity in it, it's effectively useless. Okay, so that passport that you get as a second valid passport is good for about 18 months. My experience is, at about 18 months, when I went to renew it, is that they renewed it, and the expiration date of it was now renewed for approximately 5 years, meaning that the expiration date of it was the same expiration date as my main passport. And if you don't know, I mean, I'm sure most of you do, the passports in the United States, regular passports, not diplomatic, are good for 10 years. And so I think I had 5 or 5.5 years or something left on my passport. And so this second valid passport was now basically going to expire in the same month and year that my regular passport was. And so I asked the woman that helped me with the service, because I was down in Washington D.C. picking it up at their offices. I said, "Oh, is this new? Are they now 5 years?" And she said, "No." She said, "Usually what happens is that, once you get your second one, they realize, okay, this is what this guy does. This guy travels a lot, because of course what you need to do is you need to send in your expiring passport, and if you've renewed your passport, you realize that they give you the old one back when you renew it, and they just basically put a hole punch in it, right? So it's got a hole. And so they look at it and they're like, okay, this guy's second valid passport has like stamps in it because he's actually using the silly thing. And so you can use it to travel and get stamps. And you can use it like any other passport, and I'll give you a great example. So for example, my second valid passport is the one that I have my Thai OA visa in, because that was the passport that I had available to me when I was applying for my OA visa before I came here for this trip. And so I have my second valid passport, which is a very valid passport. It's the one that I am using 100% of the time for all of my business here in Thailand. Thai passports are only good for 5 years. I didn't know that. I think I maybe knew that. I know that Gracie's passport in the Philippines were good for 5 years, and then I think Duterte changed it so that they were good for like 10 years or something. So when she renewed hers either last year or 2 years ago, they're good for 10 years in the Philippines now. But yeah, I didn't know that Thai passports were only good for 5 years. So, which, basically means that you have a 4.5 year passport, which means at like year 4, you need to start essentially, renewing the thing, right? So anyway, but what I was doing is I was renewing my main passport for a couple of reasons. One is that it had a pretty old picture in it, and it had a picture in it where I actually had hair, and I'm kind of joking around right now, right? Obviously I'm bald, but like the pictures that you've seen of me in the last like 3 years, I have a lot of forehead. While I had a ponytail and like hair on the sides, there was a significant amount of forehead, such that my second valid passport, which actually has pictures of me with hair on the side, it shows enough forehead where they look at the picture, they're like, oh yeah, you're basically the same guy. Whereas my main passport I had the curly hair in the front, because again, it was 8 or so years old. And I said, okay, look, I'm going to be traveling over there, and the last thing I want to do is get in line in Malaysia or Indonesia or potentially Saudi Arabia or something, regardless of where I'm going to be traveling, because I'm over here in this part of the world, and it's not like I can just swing by the Los Angeles, because there are many consulates, by the way, in Los Angeles. And so for the most part, any countries that I would want to go to, they pretty much have a consulate in Los Angeles. There's no real requirement for me to go to Washington, D.C., to go to their embassies. I can usually get what I need done in Los Angeles. So for 2.5 or 3.5 hours in the car, I can usually get to any consulate that I need to and get, that stuff done, right? So anyway, I said, okay, well, I'm going to renew my passport, and I'm going to get it done with pictures of me as the bald guy. And so that was getting renewed, and I got it done through a service that I use out of Florida, and I've used them for now, I want to say 4 passport renewals, meaning this is my second main passport I've renewed with them. I've renewed I've renewed 2 second valid passports. I've gotten 2 second valid passports from them, and they also got me my 10-year Chinese visa. So that's another thing. My main passport now, with my bald head, right, is basically brand new. My previous 10-year main passport has my 10-year Chinese visa in it. So, as you know, you don't just like take the sticker out and put it in your current passport. If you want a new visa, if you want to like transfer the visa, you don't just transfer a visa, you carry around the old passport. So right now, I have my second valid passport that I carry around because it's got my Thai visa in it, which allows me to hang out in Thailand and travel in and out of Thailand. I have my main passport because that's my one that is actually attached to my APEC card. Just so you know, if you have a main passport and a second valid passport, the APEC business travel card is only attached to one passport. And they will expect you to show that passport at immigration. They will scan the APEC business travel card, and on the back of it, it will have the number of your passport. For most people, it's like, okay, Mike, well, why in the world would anyone other than you, because you're terminally unique, have a second valid passport? And I've already explained to you why I do, but you may not have that requirement. But the point is that the Thais who become U.S., Jorgen says, Thais who become U.S. citizens keep both the U.S. and Thai passports valid. They use both when traveling. That is very common I completely agree with that. And actually, a friend of mine that I knew who wasn't a U.S. citizen, actually, she green card holder. She was married to a U.S. guy, lived in Pacific Beach down in San Diego. When she would enter the U.S., she would enter on her green card. When she would enter Thailand, she would enter with her Thai passport. Her name on her Thai passport was totally different than her name on her green card. So it was sort of interesting because I'm like, wait, aren't you supposed to update your, and I guess they didn't care about that. But yeah, so the way it works is if you have dual or triple or however many passports you have, because you can absolutely have multiple passports and be citizens of multiple countries. You don't just have dual. That dual isn't the only option, right? I mean, in other words, most people just have one citizenship allegiance, right? And you get one passport. And then there are many people, certainly everyone has heard dual citizenship, very common. So I don't know if it's very common, but it's certainly, if you say to someone dual citizenship, and not like, oh my God, what's that? Why don't I just travel to Mars instead? No, dual citizenship, you've heard of it. But you can get 2 or 3. And so the way that works is the expectation of the country. If you hold a passport to that country, the expectation is when you enter that country, they expect you to use that passport. And so I think it's funny, and I've seen that. And there's actually this one website, Nomad Capitalist, and I believe the guy's name is Andrew. And again, I take what I want and I leave the rest for later. Part of his shtick is I think valid, and he gives a lot of valid data, and he gives a lot of it for free actually, and it's very accurate. Some of his sales techniques I don't particularly like. They feel a little cheesy and that sort of thing. It's just, regardless, he's providing a service that obviously people pay for, otherwise he would have no viewers and that sort of thing. But anyway, nomadcapitalist.com. There's another website out there, again, that has nuggets of data that are accurate, that are helpful, but again, don't just go to one source. Don't just take my opinion, don't just take his opinion, don't just take, and again, if you have any questions about this, feel free to email me. My response to you might be like, that's a very good question. Talk to an attorney. But nonetheless, I will always give you my experience, because that's not, and if my experience was, so here's what I did, it landed me in jail, but that hasn't happened, right? But anyway. Adam says, my wife, who was born and raised in Mexico City, naturalized U.S. citizen 30 years ago, holds both a U.S. and a Mexican passport. Absolutely. And some of my history, I was born in the United States. My parents, at the time, were Canadian citizens, and so I had dual citizenship. And I believe that was the case until I was 23. Had I been more mature at 23, I would have said, I should really hold on to this dual citizenship thing, because in the future, when I'm 50, it's really going to be wise to have, But no, I was dumb. No, I wasn't dumb. I was just, my level of experience wasn't as vast, right? I mean, I was closed-minded, and at the age of 21, 22, 23, all I could see was the United States and Canada and Mexico, and I heard of the Caribbean. I couldn't have found Thailand on a map. I mean, I could have, right? I mean, but it's like if someone said, "Oh, what country is to the west of Thailand?" I would have been like, "What? What country is to the south of Thailand? How far away is it of a walk from Bangkok to Singapore?" I wouldn't have been able to. So anyway, I ignorantly basically did nothing. And so what I believe that meant, and I'm trying to figure this out with the Canadian government now, actually, is that I forfeited, without doing any sort of work, my dual citizenship. So I'm a U.S. citizen for sure, but I believe my dual citizenship is gone. I believe I can get it back, because it's not like any of my history has changed. It's just that I didn't do what I was supposed to do and continue it. So it's not like, my parents weren't Canadian when I was born, so I can't, that doesn't change. So it may involve, and the good news is that Canada has a embassy in Bangkok, and making an appointment there is fairly easy. And their website is it's okay. And so anyway, so I've applied for them to revisit that and do some research. Believe it or not, there's like a button that says, do you want to have this done, or do you want us to do research on it? And I just chose the research one, and I'm waiting to hear back and see what they're. Same. My dad was born in Canada, and I was born in the U.S. Yeah. And so I don't know what, maybe you were astute enough at 23 to say, you know what, at 22 I'm going to fill out this paperwork, because you never know, Mike. And you've got 2 passports. I'll tell you what, my friend, if you know, he says, I believe you just fill out one form. Well, I'll tell you what, if you can find that form, I will buy you a smoothie. Because I have been unable to find that form. Once I get that form, I don't know what it then takes to get some degree of proof that I have this dual citizenship in the form of applying for and then receiving a Canadian passport. I don't know how that's done, but that will be sort of my next step. I think that would be a good long-term move. Anyway, so if you have any questions, I will be okay. So well done. So Adam says I will be tested on hockey rules. So in other words, if I don't know what the hell icing is, you're gone. I'm trying to think. I know my mom isn't watching this because it is 10:45 p.m. back where they live. But I'm trying to think when I started on ice skates. I mean, my whole family's Canadian. So, and my Uncle Earl, my mom's brother, he coached hockey. And so it's funny, I had a buddy of mine from Southern California. He just recently posted on Facebook. He goes, oh my God, I went to my first hockey game, and it's minor league hockey in San Diego. It's the San Diego Gulls. And so he was showing a picture of himself with the Gulls girls, right? So he's at a Gulls game. The only thing that he uploads to Facebook is the picture with 3 really cute girls that are, the cheerleaders basically for the hockey team. Jürgen says, I have a friend from Canada who told me this. I will check with him. All right, cool. Thank you very much. And that's relative to his statement about you just fill out one form. So I'm very excited about that. It would be great to learn about that. And if we find that out, then we can post it and let other people know about it. That's kind of the cool part about doing this whole internet thing, right? Especially if it's accurate data. I really prefer to do that. Anyway, he posts this thing, and a lot of my buddies back home in San Diego, I mean, not necessarily so much anymore because the Chargers left, but they were really into football, and I've never liked football. I've never enjoyed going to the games. I don't like the attitude of the people that I've sat next to. Again, that's just been my experience. Maybe I just had bad luck, but I've never been a football guy. And so whenever everybody was, hey, do you like football? I said, look, girls watch football, men play hockey. So if I'm tested on the rules of hockey, bring it, Adam. Because I had my Bowers when I was probably 4.5, and then I upgraded to CCMs, baby, I think when I was like 8 years old. So, and I played pond hockey, which means you got to learn how to stop when the ice is not flat, because you get that ripple. Because when it rains and then it freezes over that, then you get that ripple, and you got to be able to stop on that, and you end up falling, of course. But playing ice hockey was really fun. It was really fun with my friends. Pond hockey. Yeah. I really, it's funny, I grew up on the East Coast in New England, which means we have weather, which means in the summer it can be 90 degrees and 95% humidity. And then in the winter, which is basically right now, February, it can be minus 20 Fahrenheit with a wind chill factor. And so Adam says, I own a farmhouse in Vermont. I remember the ice. Far prefer the San Diego climate. Copy that, my friend. Yeah. So I remember we used to buy these like little, they were round pens, and they weren't like, I guess, writing pens, but they were basically these round things. They're about this long, and there was like this silicone spray that was inside of it, and you used to squirt that inside of the locks of your car. Because if it rained and then the water seeped into the key of the car door, you were unable to get your key in there, and you weren't able to unlock your own car because, of course, there was no like remote